This is Here Come the Irish. I'm Michael Owens.
I'm Matt Southland.
Let's get a few more people in the lobby here before we get started. You guys got any questions during this episode, just feel free to comment on there. I'll be checking on here to see what all kinds of questions you guys got. So just give us a second here to get started. All right, looks like we've got a few people in here, Matthew, so if you're ready to kind of get started on the preview.
All right, so we'll start with the Virginia recap. Pretty good game, I'd say. Start off by saying it was a great win against a top 20 opponent. Also, back-to-back weeks of facing top 20 teams, so it's tough to go 2 weeks in a row, hard competition, and win in at least one of them.
Yeah, I know it's we're already, I don't know, it's like week 5 or 6 through the season, and some teams haven't faced a ranked team this year. I mean, I think Ohio State's probably the number 1 team in the country right now. They blew out Nebraska, but they don't have a win over a top 25 team. I guess We'll have one over here, Michigan State coming up, but they beat Michigan State. Michigan State will drop out of the top 25. So, I mean, 2 wins against top 20 teams. Notre Dame did a really good job. We said that's the huge storyline for the year if they could bounce back against Virginia, because if they lost last weekend, they were out of the playoffs. So it was a great bounce back win.
Yep. And then around college football, a big storyline was Clemson at North Carolina. North Carolina going for it for 2 and losing, but that just shows you that anybody can be beaten right there. Yeah,
Clemson has definitely not looked as good as they were last year. And I love Mac Brown, man, the old football coach. Some of these football coaches coming back. Les Miles at Kansas, we'll see how that works out. Herm Edwards there at Arizona State. So a lot of these guys, they're like, man, I'd rather be out there on the football field with doing that sort of thing, just sitting on the couch watching.
Yeah.
So I was really surprised that Clemson almost lost. Clemson is not as good as they were last year. But then again, it seems like Clemson always plays, like the last couple of years they've lost to like Pittsburgh or Syracuse, teams like that. But when they play the big boys, they always seem to rise to the occasion. It seems like they always play a level of their competition. So it kind of stinks for Notre Dame because Clemson's almost certain, well, I guess that's what we thought last week too, to take a playoff spot up. So if North Carolina could have beat them, an 11-1 Notre Dame team against a 12-1 Clemson team, Notre Dame might have edged them out, but who knows if Clemson will lose the rest of the year.
Yeah, so a little bit more about the Notre Dame game in general. We'll start with the defensive side. The defensive line had 8 sacks, and that's huge because they came out of their shell, you could see, and defense is starting to really get to the quarterback.
Yeah, I know a couple years ago under Van Gorder, which we'll get to here, Notre Dame's defensive line, they just didn't have a lot of talent or even depth really out there at the defensive line, and now it's become a real strength. Like you always see these playoff teams have a great defensive line, like Clemson had one of the best, if not the best, defensive line in the history of college football. And now Notre Dame does have a great defensive line. That's an area that was a weakness a couple years ago as a strength, and that was really good to see. So you guys got any questions, feel free to shoot them to us. And who more specifically, we talk about who got the sacks?
Yeah, so I like the way that Notre Dame defensive line plays as a unit, but they also have some guys with real NFL potential, and one of them being Julian Okwara. He had 3 sacks and 2 forced fumbles. That's a crazy stat line. And then Khalid Kareem with 2 sacks. So up front, they're solid, and they got a lot of talent.
Yeah, I did see someone here comment on here. Dalen Hayes is a big loss. He's kind of Notre Dame's backup too. He will have eligibility, thankfully, because he only played in 4 games, so he can save himself for next year. It will be huge for the team next year. But as far as Notre Dame's depth, it's hurt a little bit there on the defensive line, but that is one of the most deepest spots on the roster. But definitely not beneficial to losing him.
Right, and then in the secondary for the Virginia game, Gilman had a pick and Hamilton had a pick, so they just got to keep that up. Defense line's doing their job, need the secondary to do their job as well.
Yeah, and more specifically, in the second half when they got the onside kick, Notre Dame's defensive line just took over. I mean, we basically scored 2 touchdowns in the third quarter, like almost scored as many points as the offense did, where there was a sacked fumble, then an interception where they hit the ball out, and Notre Dame defense gave away 14 points, right, or contributed 14 points. So that's crazy to see our defense just taking over the games. And that's what we like to see from playoff teams. It's always about having a good defense, and Notre Dame's defensive line as well as the secondary. I mean, we got so much talent. Kyle Hamilton's going to be good for the next couple years, and Gilman's going to be in the NFL. Guys who know, it seems like they're always there tackling guys who know exactly where the ball is at. Really good football IQ.
Absolutely. And then on the offensive side of the ball, it was definitely a rushing day. Book went 17 for 25 with no touchdowns, and he took a negative 11 yards on 9 rushing attempts, so that's not what you look to see in a mobile quarterback. Cole Kmet had 4 catches, Claypool added 6, And then, like I said, the rushing game was huge as Tony Jones went for 18 carries, 131 yards, and then 3 touchdowns. And then, along with the rushing, Sebo Flimster also had 6 rushes for 27 yards.
Yeah, let's touch on Ian Book. It just seems like he had a good game against Georgia. He's had some decent games, but he still hasn't had one of those games like last year, like almost 75% completion percentage. Then anytime he needed to rain, he got like 5 yards. It seems like, it's easy for me to say. Seems like a lot of the times when he does tuck it and run, he ends up choosing the wrong times when it seems like there's a bunch of space in front of him. He tries to force a football. Obviously, it's easy for us to second guess. We're not the quarterback at Notre Dame right now, but I still think if Notre Dame is going to make the playoffs and beat USC and Michigan here, he's going to have to step up. Kind of thought he'd be a dark horse for the Heisman coming in the year, and really haven't saw much of that. I guess teams like Oklahoma hasn't played really anybody. They're just running up on the score on all these scrubs, and some other teams, these quarterbacks are just running up the score. So I hope he can get that mix figured out again with the accuracy as well as his running game, because I think against Georgia it could have been the difference in the game.
Obviously, that was their game plan going in. They wanted to run the ball. That's why they gave 18 carries, and Tony Jones went off. So part of that probably was Book. That's why he had 9 rushing attempts. Didn't work out too well for him as it did Tony Jones. But I would definitely look for them to run a more balanced offense this week.
Yeah, it's kind of like the defense seems like a legit playoff defense right now, but the offense needs to take it up to the next level. Well, it just seems like a little bit they need to work on everything, whether it's the deep passing game, the short passing game, the running game. It's like the offensive line has got so many 4-star, 5-star recruits on their offensive line. Huge, big guys. It seems like Notre Dame needs to be getting more yards per carry. I know they had a good week. Hopefully when Jafar Armstrong gets back, they'll kind of take it to the next level. That Michael Young's back. Cole Kmet's been back for a few weeks. So I just want to see this offense get taken to the next level. And I don't think it's one thing. I think it's a lot, like the passing, the running game. They all need to improve.
Absolutely. Let's move on to the Bowling Green game. Got a big storyline in Van Gorder returning to South Bend. That's one thing that I'd say Notre Dame fans look forward to, I guess. He was at Louisville for one season, now he's at Bowling Green. So this is definitely a big storyline.
Yeah, I don't know really to be mad at him or kind of feel sorry for him. He got to coach college football. I'm not sure how much he got paid, and that was his job. So it kind of comes with the territory. Everyone would be loved to get paid, be a coach as their full-time job. So then again, he kind of cost Notre Dame a couple good seasons right there. We all remember that Michigan game where Notre Dame shut him out and he was pumping his fist on the sidelines. I'll never forget that, and that was a great moment that I'll never forget when they shut them out. But then again, him coming back to Notre Dame Stadium, it'd be interesting to see if he gets anybody mixing. I guess he kind of might just try to hide on the sideline. I'm not really sure what his thought process is. Maybe he doesn't care. Maybe he's embarrassed. But it's just something to talk about. Probably the biggest part of this game because Bowling Green's really not that good. So just having Van Gorder back in South Bend, ever since he's left, Notre Dame's defense has definitely gotten to seem like better over the last few years since he's left. But it's the number one storyline.
Yep. So as far as Bowling Green as a team goes, they are 1-3 playing the MAC. Lost to Kansas State 52-0 and Kent State 62-20. So obviously their strength of schedule isn't near what Virginia's was last week, facing reasonable opponents to where they could come in and be ready.
Yeah, you don't want to ever overlook an opponent, but this isn't like a Pittsburgh or Purdue kind of thing where they can maybe upset you. They just got completely blown out, and Notre Dame's a lot better than both those teams they got blown out by. So hopefully Notre Dame can get Ian Book out, maybe start the second half, see Phil Dracovic get a lot of playing time. But I think it's definitely going to be a blowout, and it's kind of and if anybody's complaining about playing Bowling Green, they played Georgia and Virginia, 2 top 20 teams back-to-back, and look who some of these other teams in the country are playing. So it's definitely a good break before they got the green out against USC and Michigan coming up.
So obviously you think that Bowling Green is kind of in a rebuild. The MAC has always got schools that are bad, good, and they just don't really Bowling Green's head coach is in his first year, Scott Leffler. He was obviously the former Michigan quarterback, and we'll see what he can do with their rebuilding process there.
Yeah, Bowling Green's kind of one of those stepping stones for a better place, like whether it be like Ball State or like a Cincinnati job. It's like always kind of a stepping stone job. It's good, been a historically decent college football team for where they're at. We'll see. Hopefully, maybe he can get it turned around here in the next couple of years. We'll have to see. The coach before him couldn't. So it's definitely been a stepping stone for a lot of coaches. If you want to mention some of the coaches they've had recently.
Yeah, so Urban Meyer was at Bowling Green, Dave Clawson, who was Wake Forest coach, and Dino Babers, who is Syracuse's coach, his coach there. So obviously, like you said, a stepping stone for them to get on to bigger and better things.
I think that might have been Urban Meyer's job right after he was like wide receivers coach at Notre Dame. That might have been his job right after that, coaching at Bowling Green. If only people knew how great of a coach he was going to become then. I think he was there for a year or two, but like you said, a Wake Forest coach, Syracuse's coach right now. So it's definitely a lot of good D1 coaches that were started there.
So as far as their players go, they're led by quarterback Darius Wade, who is 66 for 114 with 664 passing yards, and he has 3 passing touchdowns, 3 picks. So we're going to see another dual quarterback threat here. 27 rushing attempts for 87 yards over the season. Probably not near as athletic or near as good as Virginia's last week, but it's also a dual threat quarterback, so it's the second or third one you've seen in a row.
Yeah, Notre Dame's definitely got a lot of practice against dual threat quarterbacks this year, and it's kind of hard not to find a dual threat quarterback in college football besides maybe Jake Fromm. And he actually did run a few times against Notre Dame. I think he had like 50 yards in his whole career, and he probably had like 20 yards against Notre Dame. It seems like 3rd and 9, and somehow he got a good carry. I remember like that, but it seemed like it didn't go Notre Dame's way against Fromm, against the statistics. But does he have a great wide receiver as well?
Yeah, so Quentin Morris is 6'4" receiver there. He has 16 receptions for 218 yards and 2 touchdowns this year. Obviously, they haven't put up very many points, but when they have, Quentin Morris has been their main target.
All right, and that's probably the most publicity they'll ever get in their college football careers on our show right now. So got to give them a little respect, kind of say that the standouts there for Bowling Green. But really what we want to talk about is see how Notre Dame can improve. And it's going to be like Michigan last week. Some people are like, oh, Michigan, they bounced back. I'm like, they just took it out on Rutgers. Like, Indiana's going to beat probably destroy Rutgers once they play them in the Big Ten East. Like, chill out. Like, they had one good game. So, I mean, everything's probably going to go right for Notre Dame this weekend. So it's kind of hard to tell if anything's even getting improved on. But it's a great time to try some things because, like we said, USC, Michigan coming up.
So even though this is kind of a look past game, what do we want to see from Notre Dame? And one of the big storylines is prepare for USC and Michigan. Don't overlook it. Obviously, you never want to overlook a game, but make sure that you're prepared. Try to keep as many people healthy, get your rotation going to where people play more, a lot of that stuff.
Yeah, definitely want to see some younger guys in there. The running back, Sibo Flimster, who last week who had a good – seems like every time a freshman or a younger running back comes in there, like a sophomore, seems like they're always their first like 10 carries are like all heart and they get like 10 yards and then don't go down. So he did a good job of that. I remember Josh Adams and CJ Procise last couple of years when they first came up along. The young guys always run with so much passion. Not saying the older guys don't. It's just your first couple carries, you're just out there crazy. But want to see him get some more carries, maybe Kyron Williams, Braden Lindsey, who's got a lot of speed at the wide receiver position. I want to see as many young guys getting there as possible. Obviously, they can play up to 4 games and still have their eligibility left for a whole season. So see some younger guys get some action, maybe some guys who can contribute towards a playoff run later in the year, like Sibo Flimster. I'm not sure I don't think Jafar Armstrong's back this week. We really shouldn't even play him. I don't think he's back anyway. So save him for USC and Michigan coming up. Get a lot of young guys in there. What else bullet points we got on there?
Two other big things were better special teams. Had a fumbled punt and an onside kick recovered by Virginia last week. So that's one thing. It just needs to be tighter and then along with less penalties. Yeah,
so the special teams, what really stood out to me is it seems like every time there's a kickoff, I'm always thinking onside kick. Always pessimistic, like they're going to kind of – it's like when Notre Dame's the better team against Virginia, I always feel like these teams are going to try to do everything in their power on trick plays to beat Notre Dame, which they did. And I forget who it was, but Notre Dame's kickoff kind of started to lean towards the left, and there was a spot open up, and they kind of get that little pooch kick over there. Kind of similar to what Alabama did to Clemson in the national championship game a few years ago, where they kick it to where they're not running at. Notre Dame's special teams try to get a little competitive advantage, but they probably would just let the ball float in the end zone anyway, so I'm not sure what they're trying to accomplish by that. So hopefully it doesn't happen again this year.
Right.
But also Chris Fink, senior, he had one where it just hit off his hands and then gave Virginia great field position. I think the onside kick and then that muffed punt were kind of like back-to-back to start the second half. So that really, and our defensive line stepped up big time. I mean, Virginia had 2 great opportunities where our defense just shut them down. Just a testament to how good our defense was. But it seems like, unfortunately, I'm not trying to be too negative here, but it seems like every year Notre Dame's special teams is always more of a weakness rather than a strength. Obviously, we had Justin Yoon Jonathan Doyer's kicker now, but it seems like Notre Dame never has a guy who just was electric punt returning. We haven't had that in forever.
Yeah.
C.J. Sanders returned a few kickoffs and punt returns a few years back, but it seems like Notre Dame's never dangerous. They always try to be complacent, which is fine. You don't want to beat yourself because Notre Dame has more talent than everybody else, but it'd be nice to see Notre Dame put like one of their fastest guys on the team back there and him run it back. But then again, you don't want to see Michigan, their punter muff one, or you see some guy muff it like Georgia did. So I guess it's Chris Fink's more of a safe play, but I'd like to see Notre Dame be more aggressive on special teams.
Yep, and then on the offensive side of the ball, looking for Ian Book to play how he should against Bowling Green. And if he does, Phil Yurkovich will get some time, hopefully, at the backup role and maybe give him some experience just in case some unfortunate events happen down the road.
Yeah, guy from Pittsburgh, 4-star recruit, Phil Yurkovich. Hopefully, we'll get to see him play. We haven't really seen a whole lot of him besides the Blue Gold game. See what he can do in actual game action. Let's get more quality reps, the better. Then one other thing, like we're saying, back on the penalty part, like Notre Dame's had some false starts and a lot of mental mistakes, even at home. It wasn't even like just at Georgia, too. So they're going to have to clean that up because they can't do that at home against Virginia. They can't afford. Obviously, I'm going to the Notre Dame-Michigan game. I want Notre Dame to beat them. I think they will, but you can't go to at Michigan and get like 7 or 8 penalties and still expect to dominate.
And especially in an atmosphere like that, you might expect to get penalties, but you got to trim them down. On to our predictions. So for the Notre Dame Bowling Green game, I got Notre Dame at 49, Bowling Green at 17. I feel like this should be a blowout. No excuse for this to be a close game.
All right, you guys got any questions for me? Just feel free to. I'm checking out here on the Instagram, see if you guys got any questions for me. My prediction: Notre Dame 56, Bowling Green 13. I think Notre Dame's got class. Unlike some teams who, like Penn State, will run it up on Idaho like 90-0, and then they'll lose the next week after. Notre Dame. I love when schools run it up and they actually play somebody they lose. Obviously, Notre Dame's going to win this game easily. It just depends on how much points our backups can score. Coach Kelly's not going to run it up. He's not going to try to run as many plays as possible like some of these programs will. But it should be an easy day tomorrow.
Yep. So then some other games around college football is Iowa and Michigan. Who do you got in that one, Michael?
In that matchup, I think Iowa's going to go into Michigan and beat them. Just Michigan's got so much stuff going on. They don't even know what kind of their identity is. I'm kind of torn up because I'd love to see Michigan lose every game, but then again, if Michigan could somehow beat Ohio State and they could beat Penn State, beat Michigan State and some of the other teams, that would be another quality win for Notre Dame. But then again, it's nice to see Michigan lose. So.
Yeah, like you said, Michigan's got a lot going on. I feel like at the Big House helps them out a lot, especially in them struggling. So I got Michigan in this game, but probably not by much.
Okay.
And then Auburn at Florida is another big one around. I chose Florida here, just another thing at Florida. Auburn's a great team, but I think Florida's also pretty darn competitive this year. So I think they're gonna edge one out against Auburn.
I think Auburn's lucks ran out. They got a great true freshman quarterback, Bo Nix. They beat Oregon barely on the last-second comeback. Won at Texas A&M, but Auburn plays like 8 ranked teams this year. I think this is where their luck runs out. I think they're going to lose at the Swamp. Dan Mullen so Auburn's going on the road. I think Florida goes and knocks them off finally.
Another big one is Michigan State at Ohio State. This is a huge one, actually. I got Ohio State here. Like you said earlier, I think they're the best team in college football right now. They're just so dynamic, and I think they'll put up a pretty good amount of points and beat Michigan State.
Yeah, Ohio State's got all their big games at home. They play Penn State at home. They play Michigan State at home. They go to at Michigan. They play Wisconsin at home. So I'd love to see Ohio State lose. I'd love to see Michigan State's got one of the best defenses in the country. Their offense is awful. But I hope it's a close game. At least give Ohio State maybe a scare or a really close game so we know that they're beatable. Because, if Ohio State runs the table, there's another playoff spot there with Clemson and an SEC school. So I hope Michigan State can maybe upset them or at least keep it close so Ohio State kind of gets a little nervous or something like that, and this shows that they're beatable.
Yep, absolutely.
But I think Ohio State's probably going to win pretty easily.
All right, if you guys got any questions, you read through. If not, looks like that's it.
All right. Thanks again for watching, guys. Next week we'll have the green out against USC. Then I think we have a bye week after that. Then going on the road to Michigan. So hopefully it should be an easy week this week. Hopefully in book looks good. Defense looks good as usual. See a lot of young guys we haven't seen before.